So we now move on to our next presentation by John Howe, Network Automation Pipeline from Near Zero to Hero in 45 minutes. This is John's first time presenting in Nanog. It's a pleasure to have him speaking with us today. Welcome, John.
Thank you. All right. Check this. We have sound. Fantastic. All right. Well, hey, 4:45. Thanks, everyone, for sticking in here today. It's a long day, a little more than halfway through. My name is John Howe. I am a principal solutions architect with Myriad 360. And today we're going to be talking about network automation, but specifically in the context of using pipelines. I have a QR code here. It's not a trap, I promise. You're welcome to scan it. I put it here in the beginning because that QR code goes to a GitHub repository where all of the code that's used in this presentation is provided. I'll have the QR code at the end as well. Lots of good stuff in there. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk a little bit about people-centric automation. We're going to talk about what that means to me, what that means in my experience, and how it applies to network automation pipelines. We're going to take a visual journey through what this pipeline looks like from the requester perspective all the way through fulfillment. We will deep dive into the different stages or categories of what this looks like. And then we'll do not a live demo, it's a recorded demo that shows kind of what this looks like from the actual requester perspective, and showing it all the way through the pipeline tool and everything. So as in my experience as a practitioner who has done this in kind of a blank check situation or brownfield, it's important to start this journey by looking at who your consumers is. Who they are, right? Looking at how they want to consume their automation, what it is they want to do, and what platforms they want to automate. So for example, looking at network systems that are in place. Are you a single vendor environment? Are you a multi-vendor environment? Do you have networking in the cloud, multiple sites, firewalls, etc.? Making sure that you have a platform that you can use to automate all of these things is important. Looking at your ecosystem. So I say ecosystem, but just to dig into what that is, the ecosystem is it's the immovable mandatory pieces of your environment that you have to interact with, either manually without automation or having automation reach out for you and do these things. So a good example is a secrets management tool. If you're going to provision, let's just say, a single network device, you have to have a tie-in to go and get that secret. Otherwise, you're trusting a person to go in and create a secure password and then put it into a secrets management solution later. Hopefully not a notepad on their desk. I don't think we do that anymore, right? Hopefully we don't do that anymore. IPAM, right? If you're going and creating a new VLAN as a part of some sort of an automation or a subnet, where are you grabbing that from? Are you just kind of blindly creating it? Do you have a system that kind of dynamically creates these for you? Having a tie-in there is important. And finally, CMDB, source of truth, right? We use these words these days. Making sure that after a change is made, whether it's a new device, whether it's a deletion, something, making sure that your CMDB is updated to show what the current status is, so the next time you need to run on an automation, it's there. One thing I didn't mention, but it is implied in the rest of this, is an ITSM tool. So I think every organization pretty much has an ITSM tool, so let's use it, right? Let's use this ITSM tool to be the front door for your requests. There's a lot of value that we get by doing this, and just things like showing who submitted a ticket, who approved it, why was it requested, right? And there's a lot of things that we'll get into as we talk a little bit more to show kind of some of the things that we can do, and we'll demo that as well. Pain and promise. So organizations that don't have automation, again, I'm not here to advocate for automation. I think we're all on this boat here. But just to kind of show some contrast here, since this is kind of a 0 to kind of more advanced session. So I was talking to someone earlier today actually that said for some of their network changes, there were between 6 and 8 individuals that had to be involved. And that's incredibly hard, really, when it comes from the perspective of consistency and speed. There's a lot of other things that we have to think about that automation can provide value for. But when you have so many people involved in a change, consistency and speed are the 2 biggest things that I find are readily something that you have to deal with. And at the end of the day, there's this gap that forms over time. Even if you have the best engineers in the whole world, there's this gap that forms between what you are trying to do and what actually happens. And it's just inevitable. And the result is a lower customer experience that causes us all grief as practitioners. So the nirvana here, what we want to get to is having an ITSM tool where we put on our requests. In this demo, it's going to be Jira. Doesn't have to be Jira. We'll talk a little bit about how this is more of a framework and it's not a prescriptive, lock yourself in sort of a solution. Making sure that you have a tool to assist your automation in knowing what's out there from both an inventory and a configuration standpoint. We'll be using Nautobot for that, and having a workflow engine to be kind of this brain that reaches out to a secrets management system, reaches out to a CMDB, et cetera, but also executes the code that makes your change. So the end result out of all of this is a faster, more consistent, more secure, more visible solution. And that is the last thing I'm going to say. That's academic. We're going to get into the rest of it here. So this is, again, it's a very friendly, simple example of we have our friend here that just needs access to an app. So what this person does is they will go to Jira, in this case, and they'll submit a request. And this request, which I'll demo later, it's just a NAT rule. There's a web server that is blocked by a NAT rule, and they know that they need this request. There's governance that happens in the ticket. So this is essentially someone changing the status from submitted to approved. Once it goes to that approved status, in this automation world, we look at this and we consider this as JSON at that point. And what we're able to do is, using our workflow engine, GitHub Actions, we're able to pull Jira to say, hey, Jira, give us the ticket contents here that has all the things that we need to handle this automation, right? GitHub Actions, once it has that payload, sends it off to Ansible, and Ansible has the ability to then execute this code, but it doesn't know where, right? Because in this example, it's a single Palo Alto device. However, it could be 100 or 1,000 different devices, and having an inventory management system like Nautobot is key here. So by default, Ansible does not know what we're trying to automate against. So we are going to use an inventory plugin in Nautobot to grab this information and grab it from Nautobot. And once we have that, Ansible is happy and it's able to do everything it needs. And from there, we take that JSON or that Ansible playbook, send it up to the Palo Alto device, make the NAT rule change, and record the results. We see it was successful. And because this is all being orchestrated by GitHub Actions, we're able to see in GitHub Actions that it was successful, go back to Jira, change the status to resolved, and we have a happy end user. I promise. There we go. That's how you know. It's a checkbox. So as I mentioned, we're gonna take some time and go through these core stages. So I call them stages, but realistically they're categories. When you're doing this, when you're starting from scratch or starting in a brownfield environment, I have a very strong opinion on the fact that there's not a best way to do this, right? There's a lot of different ways to do this. And there's categories, there's buckets of tools and configuration that you can put things in as they fit for your organization or even your background, right? I've worked with some customers and organizations that have a very developmental friendly mindset, and they might use a specific configuration management tool or a specific orchestration tool. I've worked with some that have said, hey, John, we're never going to write code, ever. So there's a different path for them, and there's still a path to become successful here, depending on where you start. So stage one, category one, this is Jira Service Management. That's what I'm using. It doesn't have to be Jira Service Management. It could be another ITSM tool. But the key here, as long as it has an API that we can interact with, we can do this sort of thing. One thing that's important to think about is take every opportunity to make your life easier. So if your ITSM tool has the ability to do custom form validation, to basically say, if we put in an IP address, make sure the IP address is well formatted. In this case, the form required a proper IP address with 4 octets and a CIDR block. Right? It will not allow you to submit the form, and it'll tell the end user, right? Hey, you have to do this in this format, and this just saves us all time. So do that. There might be types of requests that you'll submit where you want a human being to look at this request and say, yes, I'm the architect, I'm the manager, I'm the whatever role that might be in that governance position, I need to approve this because of organizational policies, because of risk, because of trust, quite frankly, right? Looking at this and having a manual approval. There might be some types of changes where you're okay with it. Maybe it's, like changing, turning on a switch port. Maybe you don't need someone to approve that. You could have that particular type of request automatically be approved. Flexibility is up to you to control and make work in the way that you want it to work. What we're doing here is we are essentially looking for tickets that are moved into this kind of ready for change or ready for production status. And once that change happens, that's the trigger for GitHub Actions to then grab the payload. Interesting thing about what I did here with Jira Service Management is I basically have a polling engine that runs every 5 minutes to look at Jira and say, okay, Jira, do you have a ticket that is in this Jira project in this status? No? Okay, I'll check back in 5 minutes. And after 5 minutes goes by, if it has a ticket in that status, it'll grab the information, grab the payload, and it'll move it. Having that sort of that workflow is something that allows you flexibility in the event that your ITSM tool doesn't have the ability to make an outbound webhook call, right? So there's different ways. I've worked with organizations that didn't allow that sort of network communication out of their ITSM. So what we had to do is do that sort of polling anyways. Obviously, I think if I kind of started as a sysadmin early in my career. So, one of the tenets of a sysadmin is if as soon as you set a timer, you lose. But sometimes it's the only way to get things done, right? So the other thing to kind of just to level set on, right? There's metadata, right? This JSON, it's metadata, and everything that we care about in the ticket should be input values for variables in your playbook. So that's essentially how it works. And when we talk about an ITSM tool, it's not a SIM, right? It's not a logging platform, but it is something that we can use for troubleshooting and for auditing, right? Automation is a really, really powerful tool that can help you with audits. So what we're going to talk about here as we kind of go through the remainder of this demo and this session is kind of looking at how we can use an ITSM tool to be a place to store dry runs, right? If you prior to making a change, do a dry run and say, hey, here's what I think is going to happen. do you approve this change based on what we're forecasting? Second stage or category is GitHub Actions. Again, this would be kind of your workflow engine category. And again, depending on your background, your organization, frankly, your skill level, and your trajectory, there's different tools. Again, I use GitHub Actions because it was new and it was fun and it was something I haven't done before. But again, like I mentioned, what GitHub Actions does is every 5 minutes, it reaches out to Jira. What it does is it actually executes a Python script inside of GitHub Actions, and I'm going to get into this a bit more once we look at the demo. But it executes a Python script that is in GitHub right now to go out, get tickets in the correct status, extract the ticket details, and then use them in the Ansible code, and then update the status of the Jira ticket. And again, there's a lot of different tools that you can use to do this, but and some of them will function drastically differently than GitHub Actions, because GitHub Actions is a SaaS. It's a SaaS solution. Depending on how you have it configured, it could function differently depending on what your estate looks like. If it's heavily on-prem versus all in the cloud versus distributed, there's ways that you can have this work. That's I just want to level set. That's different than what I have in the repository today. Third stage. So this is kind of like the inventory management and the actual and the Ansible execution area. So what Ansible does? Okay, so I think probably everyone has a fair understanding of Ansible here, but Ansible at scale can have some challenges. Especially when we're talking about networking. When you look at an organization that has 1,000 network devices across their entire estate. Each one of those network devices might have 100, 150 or more resources. So when you look at Ansible needing to make a change across your entire estate, this could easily consume an entire 12-hour maintenance window or more, right? Depending on how you structure your playbook. So using an inventory tool and even a configuration management tool to bypass some of this manual checking that Ansible has to do will speed up your execution, but it will also allow you to do things in a more consistent and secure way. So that's what we're doing here in a very, very limited capacity. There's a single device that's in Nautobot, but the framework could be extended greatly. One thing that's important to do is make sure that you're having your automation do a dry run. So I mentioned this briefly earlier, but what this looks like is Ansible does everything that it can do, with the exception of actually making the change, and it records these results. So when we talk about ITSM tools and what we want to put into a ticket, you really, really want to make sure that you're taking the output and putting it into the ticket just from an audit standpoint. That's super, super important. And spoiler alert, it also makes changes to the environment. Had to put that in there or nobody would know, right? All right, and this is kind of a catch-all. So this stage or this section is it's really around how Ansible is making its changes and how we look at how we can have visibility into what it's doing. So what we're doing here at a super high level is we're having Ansible go out to a Palo Alto device, we're creating a network object, and we're creating a NAT rule that references that network object. If anybody's ever used the Palo Alto Ansible collection, It's a little interesting in the way that it functions. It was even more interesting for me in setting up this demo environment because it's all running in AWS, and GitHub Actions is running in GitHub Actions, right? So there's a requirement for the Ansible Palo Alto collection to have the engine, the Ansible node that's running the code, have connectivity and access to the management IP of the Palo Alto device. So if you think about how this kind of works in GitHub Actions is essentially running a container that is executing Ansible code. So what I have to do, what I had to do in this demo is have a step that after we have the payload, the JSON from the ticket, and we have the playbook ready to go, we're actually copying that information over to an EC2 instance that's running in AWS. And then we're telling that EC2 instance to execute that Ansible playbook and use the variable file, and then give us back the output. So, I mean, the key here, right? The thing to think about is your orchestration tool is really, it's your friend. It's the thing that you want to be reaching out to everything. It's your abstraction layer. So that's what we did here, is we have this orchestration engine handling just a simple copy of a file, recording the results, and that's still a functional that's still a functional outcome, even though we have to jump through some hoops to make it happen. There are some other things that we had to do in order to get this working, which is a little interesting. Because we're copying files to an EC2 instance, we want to do it securely. So because it's AWS, we are able to go into the EC2 instance and the VPC that it's in and make a security group change and add an SSH key. What that allows us to do is use basically AWS's native tools and SSH to go and copy these files. One thing we're doing at the end is we're actually removing the SSH key and the security group rules to be secure, right? So we're poking a hole just for long enough to copy something, and then we're removing that rule when it's all said and done. And as is the way with Palo Alto, we're committing the rule after it's been created, so that it kind of goes into production. Traceability. So I love traceability. I love observability. I love getting visibility out of automation. I think it's one of the most underlooked, undervalued benefits of automation is getting visibility. A few years ago on a customer side, I had a team, and having this visibility into kind of what the team was doing really gave us a leg up in terms of being able to withstand some financial hardship. Good story I could tell you later, but definitely something to look at. What we're doing here, and what I want to talk about, is GitHub Actions has logs, and we'll show this in the demo in just a minute. But everything is in there, from GitHub Actions setting up the container, or even initializing the container, setting up the container, executing Ansible code, pulling Jira, executing Python code. All of the output is there, it's maintained, and it's stored. If it's there, we can do something with it, right? We can put it into Jira or whatever ITSM tool you have. We can send an alert, we can send a notification, we can send it to a SIM. Whatever we need to do, if the data's there, we have it and we can use it. And if we don't need to use it immediately, we can consider that debugging information for the future. As you'll see, the Ansible output is very helpful for what we're doing here. And it allows us to see very clearly if something is failing, succeeding, and it allows us to troubleshoot very rapidly. And again, like I've mentioned, at the end, when and only if things have completed successfully, the ticket will be moved to a resolved state. All right, so I'm going to go on to this recorded demo, and we're gonna try and tag team this with my friend there in the back, so we can pause it and spend a little bit more time on some of these things. So what we see here is just an IP address. I promise there's a website that's behind here, but it's not working right now. We know that there's a NAT rule. That's probably really small, but I'm executing a curl command just to confirm that it's in fact not working. So we'll go into this Palo Alto, and we'll see, okay, there's not an object. This is it's like one of those magic trick things, right? There's nothing up my sleeves. There's no NAT rule there. So we've confirmed everything is gone, and we're going to go into Jira, and this is the custom form I was telling you about. So we're going to say we need a rule changed, so this demo is going to work. We can see already there's some form validation warnings coming up. Well, I added a CIDR block at the end, and it works. Here's the destination IP that we're going to plug in, and as soon as that happens, destination port. And a business justification. This is important from an audit standpoint, from a visibility and a tracking standpoint, and my pride is important. So that's good justification to my rule. So anybody that's used Jira Service Management, this is kind of the default post-submission page. We're going to open this. We're going to open this kind of in the admin form. And the first thing I do here is I'm going to move this into reviewing status. Again, just audit, right? Visibility. And because I'm great at recording demos, before even reviewing this, I'm going to go ahead and say it looks great. I made it. It does look great. So I'm going to tell myself that, like I do every morning in the mirror. And when I realize I haven't actually reviewed it, we're going to look at it. So we can see here the information from the form. We'll submit that. And we'll move this over into ready for production status. Now, I'm not going to make you wait 5 minutes here. We'll go over to GitHub and we'll look at this. So can you pause for a second for me? Okay. So again, I gave you a QR code here earlier. I'll give it again at the end. If you miss it, I think it'll be online. If not, just come flag me down. I'll give it to you. So there's a lot of information in here. I didn't hide anything. You'll see there's 193 commits. I can't promise that everything is. I can't promise I'm not frustrated in any of these commits. It was a lot of work to put this together. But yeah, you can go in here and again, everything is designed to give you the ability to do this yourself. So in each one of these directories, you'll see hello world files. So if you want to know how to do basically a hello world against Jira, how to grab a single ticket, multiple tickets in a specific status, it's in there. If you want to know how to use Ansible to do more or less a hello world against a Palo Alto device, or just to make a simple change against a Palo Alto device, it's in there. One thing that was very, very important to me was to have this be a demo that I can tear down, spin back up very easily. And as such, there's some Terraform code here. This is all in AWS, like I mentioned. So there's code that's in here to basically spin up a Nautobot host, an Ansible host, a web server, all part of the demo, and tear it back down if you like. There's two components, just in full transparency, that are not included in code. One is populating Nautobot. Didn't feel like that was going to be super valuable for anybody else except for me. And it's just a lot of API calls to set up Nautobot to be functional here. So maybe a little lazy, sorry about that. And the other part was actually provisioning a Palo Alto VM. That's my day job. So we're not gonna have that included here. So yeah, lots of stuff in here. You can play it. And it's everything from some prerequisites to descriptions of what's in the repository to GitHub secrets, right? So what are the what's required in order to do this. So again, GitHub Secrets is kind of an easy way to store your secrets securely. GitHub Actions has direct access to GitHub Secrets. And I have some instructions. So in GitHub, there's this Actions tab. And we'll see here, there's this very creative workflow called pull Jira and deploy artifact to EC2 and parse JSON. So I'm going to go and I'm going to hit run workflow, and it's going to show up. So we have the top level item, which is called and can you pause it real fast? We have the top level item here. If you look in the top left, called pull and flatten. That's called the job. And I've mentioned this a couple times, but it's important to understand that the way that GitHub Actions works, it really is quite literally a container that spins up. You tell it the image, and then you can provide it instructions for how that container runs. So what we're doing here, because we're executing a Python script, we're telling it every time it runs to set up Python dependencies. I know that this script that I wrote needs a certain number of Python modules. So we're doing that inside of the container. We are running the Jira polling script. And what that's doing is it's going out to Jira, it's authenticating, it's looking at a particular project, and it's looking for tickets in that ready for production status. And what I'm doing here is I have got this file called processed issues. This is important because we don't want to run into this issue where there's a ticket that's being processed. Maybe it runs long. It's a safety check, right? It adds the ticket ID into a file to ensure that if this runs again prior to the work being done, we're not trying to make the same change on the same ticket multiple times. There's this concept of an artifact repository inside of GitHub Actions. And what we have here is one job, but once this runs a little bit longer, there's another job that runs. And this artifact repository allows you to share artifacts between jobs. We have multiple jobs in GitHub Actions really to allow for different structure to exist so that you don't have one giant monolithic job. And that artifact repository allows you to share things between them. So that what that upload artifacts step is doing is just taking the JSON file that's created from extracting the ticket details from Jira, and it's putting it in there. You can hit play. So I'm just kind of going up here and So this is a common theme. Setting up the container, you're going to see this. So you'll see deployed to EC2 is running there on the top left as well. And we can see here it does show us output. So a lot of information in there. It shows environment variables. It shows output that we tell it to write. And again, I already kind of went over that. And this is important to have this output. I can't tell you how many times I was just, frankly, just kind of bashing my head up against the wall, trying to figure out, why something wasn't updated. One thing that's a little different, and you can hit pause. I promise we're almost done with the pauses. So you can see here what we're doing is we are setting up the container again. But as I mentioned before, what we're doing is we have to go out to AWS and we have to let AWS know that we're going to be connecting to it. And then we have to, once we let AWS know that we're going to be connecting to it, then we have to go out and we make a security rule change. So GitHub Actions has the ability to execute code to just go out to the internet like a what is my IP address.com. So we get the current external IP of that container and we give that to AWS's security group and say, hey, just for a minute, open this up to us for SSH to allow us to copy stuff over there. You can hit play, please. And so it's going through, it's downloading the artifact from that repository. So all that artifact is, just as a reminder, is it's a JSON file that has all of the variables that came out of the ticket. I'm setting up the AWS credentials, set up the SSH key, getting all the things we need to allow GitHub Actions to talk to SSH, talk to the EC2 instance via SSH. This is in order to allow the Ansible Palo Alto module to work. We're copying information over there, and this is running it. Can you pause it one more time? Perfect. That's a great spot to pause too. Okay, lots of output here, right? What you can see is, anybody that's run Ansible look familiar? Right? Just Ansible that's running in GitHub Actions. Actually, Ansible's running on an EC2 node. The output's being captured by GitHub Actions. And what we can see here is we have the first task, which is just gathering facts. Again, that's just kind of the mandatory things that Ansible needs to do. We're loading the ticket JSON. And because essentially we're providing this JSON as a variable, more or less, we're processing that as inputs. And then I have a debug step, which is kind of cool. We can see I am doing a little bit of tricky stuff to print out this debug information. So we can see there's an address object name, which is just JTEJ, which is the Jira project name, and the IP address of the object, NAT rule name, host name, device IP, all the information that came out of the ticket, we're now seeing that in the Ansible node. And we can see there we're creating the source address object, changed, so that worked, and we're adding a NAT rule. And then we're committing the configuration to the Palo. So everything we see here is everything that is being done to create a NAT rule. So when you pull back and you think about everything that we've done here, it's a very simple change to create an object and a NAT rule. But there's a whole framework that is around it, so that if you wanted to do something a lot more complex, you could do that now because you've got the framework to allow it. You can hit play, please. And I'm highlighting things because that's, I don't know, ADD. That's what I do, I guess. And we will once again, if you look at the very bottom there, I scrolled up. Yep, so we're running the playbook. It's the commit. It's the commit. Any Palo Alto fans here? Commit. It's taking forever. So once again, we're setting up the environment. So I have to set up Python. I have to set up some modules for the Jira ticket to run. And you can see there, we're updating the Jira ticket status. So we know that it worked. That step will not run unless the Ansible playbook ran successfully. So we're updating the Jira ticket status to confirm deployed, and we're cleaning up after ourselves. We're removing the SSH rule from the security group, cleaning up the AWS credentials. And we can see here, that has moved to deployed. We'll refresh this, and we will see there is now a NAT rule there with the object that we created, and there is there's an object, and there's the website. Okay, so this is Nautobot. Like I said, there's just a single device in there. All I did is added a single interface to allow Ansible to know how to connect. I'm not going to dig super deep into this because it's kind of out of the scope of what I wanted to talk about. But that's the key here, right? All these things work in concert. They're all extensible, but swappable if you want. All right, what's next? Okay, so when we look at this in a production environment, obviously what I did here is it's very small. It's if you knew kind of the stuff that I did in the Palo Alto device, you'd be like, oh, John, I don't know if that's a great idea. Some of my security engineers that were working on this with me certainly said that. But there's some things that we can do to turn this into something that's a bit more production ready. So maybe instead of using GitHub secrets to store your secrets, use an actual enterprise secrets management tool. So there's a number of tools that we have the ability to run inside of a pipeline, inside of GitHub Actions, that will look at the code, and just by looking at the code, you can have policies that will let the system more or less know, hey, this is, without even running it, we know that this is going to break our policy, or we know that it's good, or even just like there's not comments. We have the ability to run tools that'll do this. And it's kind of an advanced topic, but looking at really thinking of doing this in a code-first mindset, almost thinking like a developer a little bit. So there's this concept of a branching and pull request in GitHub. If you make changes to the Python script, or if you need to change some of the workflows, you can make those in what's called a branch. You can test there. You can actually have GitHub Actions point kind of that branch. And when you're done, when you test and everything's good, you can then do what's called a merge, and you can pull those changes into production. What we did here is what this solves is that consistency and that speed challenge that we talked about earlier. It does a lot more, right? There's security and visibility benefits that come as well. But the end result, gang, is better experience for you and better experience for the consumers of your automation. There's things that we could do to kind of improve this process moving forward. Things like extending Nautobot and doing more there, including more logging in Jira, having self-healing, self-repair if something doesn't work well. All things that you can do a little bit more. As promised, QR code again. I promise. If you scan it, there's no viruses. It's just GitHub. But again, everything is in there for you to kind of use. And feel free to fork it. Feel free to add an issue. My contact information is there if you have any questions. Yeah, I think that's it for me, folks.
Thank you, John. Fantastic. So I believe we have one question from the Zoom online.
Oh, 3 now. First question from Matthew Peacock, underemployed. He says, awesome demo, John. The way you describe storing state in the GitHub artifact sounds like you are creating a secondary source of truth downstream from Nautobot that multiple jobs/tasks can access to understand the state of change of the network. Do you ever run into situations where the information coming from Jira/Nautobot conflicts with the saved artifacts in GitHub? If so, how do you handle the deconflicting?
It's a great question. And yeah, I'm sorry if that was unclear. So that artifact repository, it's a pass-through between the different jobs. It is not designed to be stateful or maintained. It's just like a handoff between the jobs. Once that the second job runs, it actually gets wiped out.
One second question, what do you use for Ansible linting?
Ansible lint is one. Yeah, there's a command line tool called Ansible lint, and then there's static code analysis tools is kind of the category. I think the one that I've used the most is Chekhov. It allows you to write policies to kind of execute against your code. So there's a few of them.
That question I forgot to attribute was from Michael Osman. And final question is from Robert Cyberdog Davis. Myriad 360, what features drove the need for a tool like Jira in conjunction with Nautobot versus using Nautobot for change management? Also, great job, John.
Can you repeat the first part of that? What was
What features drove the need to use a tool like Jira in conjunction with Nautobot versus using Nautobot by itself for change management?
So I'm coming at this from the partner side. What I've seen with a lot of my customers is they want to use an ITSM tool for governance, and they want to use it as a service catalog. So it's important what I always say is I meet customers where they are. So that's what I've seen is having that governance all be in the same place. That's important for auditing, but also for if you go back to the first slide that I had, right? When you're talking about understanding your consumers and how they want to operate, they're already used to using your ITSM tool. So don't make them change their life to make your life better, right? Have them do it the way that they're comfortable in order to make your life better.
Thank you again, John, for your talk. We really appreciate your contribution.
Thank you very much.